Hello everyone and welcome to our workshop. My name is Sabine Matsika and I'm joined by Hassan, who will be introducing himself. Our workshop today is called Digital Africa and the World, Lessons from COVID. My name is Sabine, as mentioned, and I was part of LSE's PfAL program from 2017 till 2018, graduating in the 2018 Media and Communications class. Hassan?
Thank you very much, Sabine. I'm delighted to be here also with everyone. My name is Hassan. I'm originally Egyptian. I graduated from LSE back in 2019 with a master's in international social and public policy, and at the same time also graduated from the program for African leadership. So it's great to be talking on this significant topic. Unfortunately, it is digital, but at the same time, we're actually benefiting from the fact that we have this opportunity and the wide outreach we're talking to.
Yes, very exciting. And 2 years ago, we were actually in Kenya for this summit. Don't know if you were there. Hassan, no, you were not there because I remember everyone who was there. And this year, as you say, we are digital and we happen to be doing this workshop today on Digital Africa and the world. Hassan will be starting us off as we look at the impact of COVID globally and what the manifestation of this has been globally, and then start to look at how that has moved in and transitioned into Africa, where I'll be picking up, and we will finish off with a conversation that Hassan and I will go over the impact of COVID globally in Africa and what digitalization means and what technology means in this new global COVID-19 landscape. So Hassan, I'll let you take it away from here.
As everyone watching knows, the global COVID outbreak has actually taken everyone by storm. Definitely unprecedented in scale. It has spread to more than 200 countries. And so far, its impact has not only been on health, but also society, culture, and each and every individual of us has felt its impact throughout the last couple of months. What started in one place has now spread globally. Unfortunately, it has claimed the lives of more than 800,000 people, but has also infected 27 million people, including more than 1 million people in Africa. So it's critically the topic of the hour. Everyone is baffled by what is to come next, and there's large uncertainty in terms of vaccination, but also overcoming these challenges. Unfortunately, as I said, its impact has not only been on health, but the economy has been seriously disrupted. So far, the International Monetary Fund predicts that there's going to be a negative 3% growth rate by the end of 2020. Global debt has been increasing dramatically, which is also a critical topic to our continent and that of Africa, with global debt accumulating towards an $8 trillion bill to foot the economic stimulus packages that have been delivered across the world. So definitely COVID has surpassed the initial impact, but also it's likely to extend with us over the next coming months and perhaps also the years. Again, the impact is not only economic, but also in terms of labor. Serious disruptions have occurred across the world. The International Labour Organization just estimates that around 30,000 work months have been lost. And in a country such as Egypt, but also a wider continent like Africa, this is critical because already we have been facing such challenges for decades, and COVID has just made it even worse. So far globally, the income losses across the world are accountable to $3.4 trillion up to the first quarter of 2020. And this is again likely because of the disruptions and all the lockdown measures that have been initiated across the world to continually cause more damage. COVID has also outlined to us the serious challenges that we face within society and culture, everything from the gig economy, which is critical again to the topic of digitalization, has been sort of shackled and threatened in a way because of the disruptions and the fact that everyone had to move inside. Issues such as the zero contact hours were augmented, but also enterprises were put out of business. And there's lots of security challenges that came with it. definitely within Africa, the fact that for years and years we faced some fractured health infrastructure has resulted in a large question mark surrounding the topic. You know, we have issues of limited testing, for example, which has not been up to foot to other countries. Coordinated responses between Africa and between the countries within Africa has also been questionable. Yes, the African Center for Disease Control and the African Executive Health Committee have aligned the policy, but then implementation on the ground is different. You know, testing capacity ranges greatly from 10 tests for 1,000 people, for 100,000 people in Ethiopia to 280 per 100,000 in South Africa. So we're still also suffering from inequalities, but not only inequalities in testing, but the disintegrated welfare structures and the societies we live in. Unfortunately, there are lots of disparities in terms of income and welfare, which has resulted in the fact that certain groups have been damaged significantly and disproportionately by the outbreak itself. At the same time, governments have faced lots of challenges with regards to health coverage and insurance, but also corruption, as always, which is a topic that comes across the continent, has remained to be an issue with the questions of accountability and checks and balances always coming up to discussion. You know, how are resources mobilized? What capacities do we have? How are we coordinating on ground and beyond? How are we mobilizing resources for scientific research and innovation? So all these elements are critical in terms of the global landscape and definitely impacting the future. But also because we're talking about digitalized Africa, there's also an opportunity that is critical to sort of momentalize on and capture. Throughout the past 10 years, Africa has managed to push through lots of the challenges because of technology and because of digitalization, and it hence represents a critical pathway towards increasing the continent's agility and resilience. Unfortunately, we've also been one of the continents that have been struck by pandemics throughout the last set of decades, but also this technological element can help us overcome it. For instance, when one thinks about the prospect of e-health, you know, drones delivering vaccination and medicine across areas that cannot be accessed, biometric monitoring, digital IDs to track and trace individuals' movements to safeguard the environment and to safeguard communities, but also thinking about small things like telemedicine. We've all seen how the hospital disruptions and overcrowding across the world has resulted in the fact that some people cannot access specific and general medicine. So it's very important from that element, but also digitalization helps with innovation. There's lots of information sharing, public space monitoring, you know, collecting data and information helps with the vaccination process, but also with supporting and controlling and mitigating the effects of it. Down the road, digitalization can also help with Africa because currently we suffer from the fragmentation within the society and within the culture elements. Not everyone is covered in terms of social security. You know, technological and digital solutions can easily overcome these challenges. You know, help with cash transfers, with the social security benefits, and again, increase the resilience and agility of the community, but also the continent, while unpacking value and creating and leveraging opportunities. As I mentioned also, the corruption issue and accountability has always been a challenge, but definitely with more technological elements integrated and the process amalgamated together, technology and digitalization can help with overcoming this duplication, misallocation of resources. Again, across the mind, you're thinking of blockchain and the security and transfer. So all of these elements are definitely critical. However, we should also look at the bigger picture and take into consideration the fact that digitalization could not only on its own help our continent, but rather it needs to come within a bigger and more comprehensive framework that includes, you know, investments into infrastructure and human capital, but also leveraging strategic management and foresight to think about the future more and to be more prepared. Again, innovation, collaboration, and partnerships are critical. Businesses must become integrated into the discussions that we're having. everyone must actually have an active and proactive role in creating a better solution. And at the same time, digitalization does have some challenges that come with it. When you think about the digital rights across the communities, you know, information sharing, security, all these elements have to be integrated in one framework to ensure that the best possible outcome. So definitely COVID has been a challenge, but for Africa, the digital forefront is open. There's lots of opportunities to materialize in, but definitely there's more need for focusing on problem solving and mobilizing resources collectively, and to ensure that they're going to the right places at the right time to overcome this challenge.
Hassan, thank you for that. As you pointed out, the growth of digitalization across Africa is not the only building block towards a better future, but it is a necessary and a critical one. Africa reported its first case of COVID-19 in mid-February, and since then the numbers have increased. Despite the initial fears about the continent's preparedness to deal with the pandemic, as we've seen, has been a contentious issue. This idea of what is the mysterious reason Africa is not hard hit, something that we've seen recently in news reports, and that despite these initial fears by the regional and the local community, as well as the global community, the reported mortality rate is not as high as that experienced in other parts of the world. However, the number of reported cases is still on the rise. Countries have implemented various emergency response measures to curb the spread of the virus, such as border closures, public health measures, and full and partial lockdowns. The implementation of physical distancing measures resulted in the shifting of work, education, commerce, public gatherings, family meetings, and life as we know it. These day-to-day activities all have been moved online. To some organizations and institutions, especially in the private sector, this was an almost easy transition. However, the operations of many public institutions, such as schools, and of those working in the informal sector, a large sector in Africa, have been curtailed. So with COVID-19's responses being largely online, the unconnected are excluded, and not just from access to the internet, but also to the much needed information and services that affect livelihoods, something that Hassan pointed on his section, talking about education and health and the loss of this information. So with government recommendations during the implementation of the lockdown measures, where that schools should find ways of ensuring that learning continued online. This was just one of some of the measures that was experienced across the continent. However, this would only be possible if students had access to the internet and internet-enabled devices from home. As it stands now, only about 10% of students can access computers from home, with over 80% being unable to get access to the internet, leaving over 330 million learners stranded and more than 8.5 million teachers unable to deliver online classrooms. So the digitization agenda has dominated conversations among governments, policymakers, businesses, and civil society. And although Africa's race to digitalize faces various hurdles, the gaps between the region and the rest of the world are actually narrowing pretty fast. So if we look at internet penetration in Sub-Saharan Africa, it's grown tenfold since the early 2000s, compared with a threefold increase in the rest of the world. So African countries have made progress on digitization in sectors such as finance and e-commerce. In 2019, Africa had over 122 million people using mobile financial services, which have been widely adopted due to penetration of mobile connectivity and basic phones. What I say is that COVID-19 has been a wake-up call on the importance of universal internet access for all. Digitalization in response to disasters has, of course, in recent years increased substantially. This extends not only from internet access, but to big data and its analysis, to the use of technology to refine and improve processes such as contact tracing. digitalization can transform economies and people's lives. And I think that's something that we've all witnessed over the spread and the growth of the pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic has amplified those hopes. The pandemic illustrates the value of digitalization, but it has also been a stark reminder of the remaining digital divide. So Hassan, with all of these things said, we're talking these big, complex kind of technical terms, digitalization, and I think for some of our colleagues on the summit, it may not be the easiest word to digest or to perhaps understand. So I think it would be great if we can just talk from a simpler level about what digitalization is and why we're talking about it and why is it important to us Africans, especially now during the pandemic. I think when I think about digitalization, I think about the opportunities, the opportunity to boost economic growth, the opportunity to boost industrialization, the opportunity to boost and alleviate poverty and improve people's lives. So I'll put it to you and want us to kind of speak about the concept of digital transformation and why we as PfALers should be interested in this concept and gain knowledge from this.
Amazing. I think actually that's a very significant and important question because again, digitalization is one of these words that is very hard to coin in one definition, but as you rightly reflected, it is the process of transforming from the analog to the digital. So to put this in a wider context, let's say throughout our lives, we've passed through a couple of industrial revolutions. And as the World Economic Forum notes, we're currently living in what's called the fourth industrial revolution. And basically the fourth industrial revolution is based on this hyperconnectivity of individuals and people with technology, but at the same time, the onset of issues and topics and themes such as artificial intelligence, the cloud, 5G, etc. So in terms of simplifying it, it is definitely the transition from analog to digital, but it is also the more comprehensive framework. So it's not only about having a phone, but what infrastructure is set up so that you can actually create value from having the phone. I reflected about cash transfers and security, social security systems. Now, you don't need to really go to a bank to receive money or to pay money. Financial solutions are out there, but you really need to have a digital infrastructure in turn. And part of the digitalization process is developing this infrastructure, but also developing the capabilities and the know-how for individuals and how to use it. We do face a big challenge in Africa in terms of the knowledge and awareness and trust into technology. So we have a high level of penetration, but at the same time we have certain disparities that exist between communities with regards to technology. So within the context and the comprehensive framework of digitalization, definitely leaving no one behind is part of the definition. Everyone has to be integrated, how to use the technology, how to maximize the value of it. And as you say, it's not only, it's not only a technological element, but definitely critical for the economy, and it helps unlock value. I'm thinking about, the transformations that happened across Africa, especially over the last 10 years. Without the onset of digitalization and without governments and businesses investing in this infrastructure, you would never have large innovations and startups coming out of the continent. So definitely within the wider framework, it is the transition from analog to digital, but it comes way more with way more elements than that to cover, how to use technology, how to create solutions that are actually efficient for the people that need them, how to reach everyone within the content. You talked about breaking the gender gap and the gender divide within the continent. This is critical. Everyone has a right now to have access to technology, access to the internet, and with it comes all the benefits and values, but at the same time, some challenges. So if I would sum up this again, digitalization, I would say, is a big chunk of the future. We've experienced some of it, but every day more opportunities are coming up, and we need to keep going on to catch up, and at the same time try to surpass it by investing in the infrastructure, facilitating the technological sharing of items and solutions, but also ensuring accessibility and breaking the gap between everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And as you say, digitalization is this encompassing of so many different things. And I think pre-COVID, especially on the continent, there was just these talk about these big words of what digitalization could be, and this kind of tech optimism, thinking about 4IR and artificial technology. And of course, digitalization is all those things. It's encompassing of those things, but it's also, as you say, down to just the simpler and the everyday social aspects of the gender digital divide and internet access, and just those basic levels of kind of the social factors that we don't think about. And I want to link that on, when we talk about these big words, 4IR, and something that was always a buzzword of the COVID times was, innovation, something you said again. So, we talk about this call for innovation that was happening. I'm based in Botswana, and I know right here, the Botswana Innovation Hub put out a call for innovators and people who can make a app in 4 days. And it was this kind of real exciting time of, this is our moment to show that we're innovators as Africa. And I'd love for us to kind of talk about what that has meant during these times, and what are some of the real challenges that we've seen for the countries in being innovative in this race to be the most innovative, and what are some of the case studies you can think about that have been, off the top of my head, I can think of countries in the region that have embraced digital platforms. There's Cote d'Ivoire's new e-passport agency. There was Kenya's e-citizen portal. There's a whole bunch of other initiatives that I can kind of think of. And on the other side, we had the realistic side that, in my country, Botswana, where we had everything move on digitally, where you had to get a permit in order to move, but people didn't even know how to use a smartphone, those who had smartphones, and other people, a very large majority, didn't have a smartphone. So just talking about this digitalization that we talk about, your thoughts around this innovation, the race to be innovators. What are some of the real opportunities, some of the case studies you've thought about, you've been reading about, perhaps even in your home country of Egypt? Your thoughts.
Yeah, I think definitely, I mean, we did achieve lots of opportunities throughout this crisis within Africa, because it sort of acted as an accelerator to the fact that we need to change and we need to integrate more into the future. Talking about Egypt, for instance, I know for years and years we had the challenge of, having to deal with a large bureaucratic process and red tape and routine, etc. But thankfully, we were actually capable of managing the transition fairly and very well, because of the fact that we had been investing into technological infrastructure for years. So, for instance, the government was capable of sort of automatically shifting some of the services and the interactions online, through the digitalization aspect of it, which proved to be successful in terms of coverage for lots of areas and lots of opportunities. At the same time, I can reflect on, for instance, I'm not back home, but I'm living in Dubai. Dubai is sort of seen as the center of excellence, and throughout the last couple of months, we've seen, how the government here is actually capable of deploying solutions. So when you're thinking of tracing of the outbreak and the interactions between people once someone is detected to have the virus or tested positive, and etc., it becomes even more critical. We're capable in Dubai here of managing this outbreak wave in a very well consolidated manner, which in some countries of Africa we didn't have. I'm thinking again across the region in Africa and some countries, including in Egypt, there's lots of partnerships that were happening between mobile operators, for instance, to determine really the core areas that had sudden, outbreaks, and how to tackle the measures that are necessary, and sort of enforce some quarantine measures or certain protocols that are necessary to safeguard the environment. So it's really a mix of everything in terms of creating the value, but also leveraging information. I think something the world has benefited from is the fact that we live in a digital age. Information every single day is becoming available at the fingertip, but also the quantity of the information is growing at a very rapid pace, which is allowing us, including in Africa, to carry out certain analyses that are critical to unpack these future black boxes and again create more value. So I think definitely we were capable of sort of fending off certain elements through the use of technology, but we still have, a critical landscape to tackle. There are lots of gaps. I'm thinking again, digital rights, cybersecurity is very important. What happens with the information collected by governments and collected by the private sector? So we need to have, again, a more encompassing process within the continent, not only in terms of regulatory frameworks, but best practices. Digital hygiene is extremely important to understand your footprint and how you interact. And these challenges down the road will even be more serious than just investing into the infrastructure and solutions.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I hope we're not sounding so downtrodden or negative when we talk about these real kind of concerns, as you mentioned, privacy, cybersecurity, all of these stuff. But I think it's the reality of the situation. And in some ways it feels that as a continent, we've kind of been thrusted into this. But I also stay positive in the way that as we speak about these great kind of case studies where we've shown ourselves to be capable of being innovative, whatever that means, whether we're a couple of steps behind from whoever else. But I think it's been a really exciting time, as obviously it's been a very sad moment and very harrowing moment with the loss of lives. But it's been a very interesting moment, I think, for you and I working in the digital space, and seeing how we are shifting, and how, the governments are having to catch up and and seemingly somewhat doing somewhat of an open.
I think also what is important to note is the fact, and I'm maybe reflecting on a very interesting quote that we always hear here in Dubai, and it's by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed, which is the ruler of Dubai, is that the race of excellence has no end or finish line. So yes, definitely Africa, for years and years we faced these challenges, but we've also built up this resilience that is critical for the future. It's just, again, in terms of the equality and having this foresight, as you say, is critical towards, sort of leveraging the experiences we've had, especially as youth, growing up and sort of being thrown into the world of this digital economy and the knowledge economy. We're definitely in for a ride, but there are certain challenges that you need to sort of walk away and move around with.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially as the youngest continent, it's exciting and also scary times it can be. But I think we've put all of our thoughts together and had a really great discussion. And Hassan, I'll let you finish our conversation off with a conclusion around what we've spoken about today. And just wanted to say thank you for sitting with me today and doing this discussion. And I wish it was face to face, but I'm glad that we've been able to talk about the thing that we're here to talk about and use the thing that we're talking about, which is obviously the digital Africa. I'll give it to you.
Definitely. No, thank you, Sabine. Really, it's been a pleasure. And again, as we went through, the global landscape of COVID, what has happened throughout the last couple of months, there is a certain challenge we're facing now in terms of the reciprocal impact of the outbreak of the virus, which started in one place and now has spread globally, not only from a health perspective, but socially and economically. The future definitely has lots of challenges, but the fact that digitalization and this process of leveraging technology and innovation to unpack value and create opportunities and transition into the future offers our continent lots of opportunities that we can harness. It is definitely an empowering tool for individuals. We talked about breaking the gender gaps and the digital divides within the continent, but also some of the challenges such as digital human rights, privacy, cybersecurity, etc. So definitely, the future is. We're all suspicious about the future, as you say, but at the same time, I think we've been so resilient, not only for the past year, but for the African continent for years and years. We've been so resilient. We face serious challenges, and we're definitely gonna overcome this one. The world is definitely gonna overcome this one. It's just really mobilizing the right resources and focusing on the future and leaving no one behind.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and pleasure again speaking to everyone and to the Program for African Leaderships team, which has been really outstanding throughout.
Thank you. Thank you from us both.